Hello, my North Georgia Civ 1 students. I hope you guys are weathering this cold weather well. Today I want to discuss Module 2 and what you should have taken away from it. First, as a reminder, your top posts are due by Friday. Not Saturday, Sunday, Monday, whenever. They're due by Friday, with your peer comments due by Monday. And the reason for this is that in the next few weeks with these discussions, you'll start seeing multiple questions where you answer one of the questions, but then you respond to people who have answered the other questions so that you can demonstrate a full and working comprehension of what we're doing. So it's not fair if you need to respond to somebody who answered one of the questions you didn't answer and they don't post until Monday. So no, you need to have those top posts in by Friday. So please keep up with that. The penalty for a late top post is 10% per day. So if you're posting on Sunday or Monday, you're losing up to 30 to 40 points just on the discussion itself. So don't do that. You need to have that top post in by Friday. All right, so the question this week was basically comparing the Epic of Gilgamesh to the Code of Hammurabi, both of which were produced by Sumerian populations, by basically the people living in Mesopotamia. Now, they were at two different times. The Tale of Gilgamesh is much older than the Code of Hammurabi. But with that in mind, they're still produced and they still manifest the traits of the people in Mesopotamia. So what exactly do they tell us? Well, most of you nailed down the big ideas. Obviously, this was an interesting society. It was not an equitable society. As many of you pointed out, people were treated differently depending upon how wealthy they were and what social rank they were in, whether they were men or women, etc. We can see that in both the story of Gilgamesh and the Code of Hammurabi. The ways in which they are alike and different, well, one's fictional in theory. The Epic of Gilgamesh is a story told about this semi-divine character who is looking for immortality after his friend dies, and he wants to try to accomplish it for himself and ultimately realizes that he can't. So it's supposed to be, effectively, we would call it either a fable or a myth or something that's supposed to teach you, and what it's supposed to teach you is that this is the human condition. The Code of Hammurabi is a set of laws. And the significant part of it is Hammurabi was an emperor. It's important to understand the difference between a kingdom and an empire. And the significance with the Code of Hammurabi of this being an empire is that this code is designed to apply across the board to everyone, regardless of what kingdom they were in. Hammurabi expanded the size of the empire markedly. He brought in lots of people who spoke different languages, who had different religions, who had different belief systems and different social orders. And basically what he had to do was unify them under one set of constraints. And that's what literally the Code of Hammurabi is. It's what law codes are. They are designed to unify people by proscribing some behaviors and punishing people who perform them, and in others to bring them together against common human misbehaviors, as it were. Historically, if you look at things like the Ten Commandments and most of the early law codes, they're all very similar in that they are designed to unify the society and to make the government the one responsible for punishing people so that you don't create what are referred to as vendettas. And this is a big thing we'll talk about as we go along with this. All right, so what do they tell us about life in ancient Mesopotamia? Well, it was unpleasant. That would probably be the easiest way. And this kind of feeds back into that idea about why agriculture. Because most of these people are working from sun up to sundown almost every day. It's backbreaking work. It's hard work, as Harari tells you in the video. And there's always the question of why exactly people decided to do this. It certainly is a decline in the standard of living for the average person. And for the Mesopotamians, this is demonstrated. They are not a fun people. What does it tell us about the society itself? That it's harsh. It's important to understand that, many people say, okay, great, agriculture brings the ability to accrue excess, that you can store it and you can hold it for later, and this is going to help people live longer and not starve to death. This is all true, but it also has the opposite effect in that it's really, really hard work, and it takes up to 90% of the population to do it, not just in order to have this excess, because they have to feed themselves and their children, but then they also have to give over a portion of what they're producing to support that 10% that's not doing food. And it's that 10% that's creating organization and religion, that is the government, that is the artisans, that is the skilled craftsmen, that are the scribes. These are the people who are not dedicating their 24 hours a day to producing food. They are doing other things, but then they have to have access to food to survive. So you're still looking at the vast majority of people living this life of doing nothing but tilling the soil from sun up to sundown. And that's part of what makes it depressing, right? So it tells us about social hierarchy, and that, again, the vast majority of people are going to be in the peasant to slave class, literally with slaves being forced to work the land. It tells us that women are relegated to secondary roles. Now, Mesopotamia, like Egypt, was a society, which we'll be finding out about Egypt this week, in which women were given a little more autonomy. They had the right to own property. They had the right to keep things in their name. But they still, once they're married, everything still defaults to their husbands for the most part. And they're the ones who are in charge of the society. And a lot of this was so that they could, so that the fathers, the men, could be sure that their children were their own. And when they passed land down, because with patriarchy, we also began to get the issue of inheritance, that when the land became the property of their children, those children were actually theirs, particularly their sons. All right, what universal questions about humanity do these two documents reflect, and what ideas are no longer applicable today? Well, the universal questions, of course, have to do with Gilgamesh. It's the issue of immortality. Why can't we live forever? Death is inevitable. You should lead your life to maximize what you get out of it during your course of time here. But we also, from Gilgamesh, get this idea that you have obligations to other people. This is part of what Gilgamesh learns along the way. He starts out as a bad ruler, but then through this ordeal of trying to resurrect his friend or bring his friend back, he realizes that you have an obligation to the people around you, and in his case, under you as a king, to take care of them or to help them as much as you can, to try to lessen the horror of their daily lives, to try to make things better for them. With the law code of Hammurabi, among the things we see is that, again, this social inequality, this hierarchy based on power and wealth, the two that go hand in hand, and also the hierarchy of male to female, the idea that you will be punished if you violate the rules that bind the society together. That's still applicable today. What's not applicable today, and I think what many of you did stumble across, was this idea of inequality, of people getting preference based on their social status. Over the course of the thousands and thousands of years since the Code of Hammurabi was written, and especially over the course of the last 500 years, we've begun to develop more of what is referred to as a democratic view of the world, or a more equitable view of the world, the idea that the law is equal to everybody across the board, not based on your position in that society. How did the ancient Mesopotamians define justice? Well, again, that was based entirely on where you were in the social ladder. The more money you had, the higher your position in the society, the more gently you were treated. And what does it say about love? Well, love's a hard thing to define. For many people, marriages were arranged. They didn't fall, they could fall in love, but that didn't necessarily mean that they were going to be bound together for all of time, because they were not going to be marrying for love. They married to transfer wealth, to maintain family ties, and that sort of thing. How is this similar to us today? We define love differently, obviously, and we pretty much define justice differently. Again, that whole idea of equality and that the laws apply equally to everyone. All right, so that's kind of the big thing to take away with from here. I think about these ideas also when we're looking at Module 3, which is, again, on Egypt. Hang on a second. Let's go to Module 3. Here we go. For this one, your discussion is on, sorry. Now, this is one, okay, this is one where you have the 4 questions. And I didn't include, I'm sorry, I need to put that in there. When you do your peer responses, I want you to answer the 3 questions you did not answer. And I'll change that right now to put that in there. I thought I had put that in there. So for those of you who have already started this, thank you. But when you answer them, you want your peer comments to go to the 3 questions you did not answer. Again, we'll change that right now so that it's clear. All right, so again, because this is an online course, completely online, I'm not going to lecture you on these things, but these are the big ideas I was looking for in this. I will also mention that those of you who are going to do well in discussion 2, and for all discussions from this point forward, using quotes from your sources to support your ideas is the best way to get an A. Just interpreting them, you can, that's easy to do. That's pretty basic, but actually finding things that support the ideas is what we're looking for. So be sure you do that. I also say I have no discussion due to what happened with this. All right. I'll get that set right now. All right. I look forward to seeing your discussions for Learning Module 3. If you have questions, email me. Otherwise, I will begin the process of grading your discussion so you can begin to see what you need to do. I look forward to this coming week, and I hope we survive more bad weather. So, if you have problems, let me know. Thanks.